Hello, and welcome to I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here, where we are all allowed to be perfectly imperfect. I am Eileen Webb, a licensed psychologist, cognitive behavioral and EMDR therapist, podcaster, author of Perfectly Imperfect and Transformation Through the Power of Quotes. Over the past 32 episodes, we have been looking into how perfectionism affects us, the different individuals from different backgrounds, the way they grew up, where they have learned, and their expectations from themselves, others, and what they think others are expecting of them. We have not touched something that I would like to bring in today, which is about the younger generation, the young people and children. How are they experiencing expectations? How is that affecting the way, the things they expect from themselves, from others, and what they think others are expecting of them? That brings me to some data that Curran and Hill have analyzed of 40,000 students over, I think, uh, for several decades. And they saw that from 1987 to 2017, the percentage of perfectionism has increased, has doubled, actually. It has doubled from 9% to 18%. And they predict that by 2050, 1 in 3 young children will be suffering from mental health problems caused by those perceptions that they think of others are expecting of them. So what other people are expecting of them in their professional life and in their academic life, as well as their private lives. Now, that is a big deal. That is a worrying prediction. So today we have got an amazing guest, and we will be discussing how our times with social media and the expectations from schools and performance, how that might be affecting children and young people. Enjoy. Hello, hi, Sidra. It's lovely to have you here today. Thank you for coming.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be on here.
We are actually really, really excited about today. So I'm aware that your background is really fascinating. Would you like to just give a bit of background about who Sidra Naeem is and where you are right now and why you do what you do?
So I'm a teacher by profession. I'm specialized in special educational needs and disabilities. So I'm a SENCO. I'm also a chaplain as well. And I'm a lecturer for special needs in the teacher training units. Apart from that, I do lots and lots of voluntary work. I'm a governor at a grammar school, and I run a women's group to empower vulnerable ladies through sports, mental health lectures, and cooking, and lots of other activities. I feed the homeless as well once a week. And basically, I'm just a community really person, a community advocate, if you like.
How you get the time to do all of this is absolutely amazing. But there's also another thing. You're also the Queen's representative or the King's now, aren't you?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. So with all the voluntary work that I do around, Essex, but also in outer areas, I was actually nominated to be the Queen's representative originally, and she made me her representative. And then after that, now obviously the King's representative. I have that role until I'm 75 years old.
And I think you can keep your title for
Yes, that's correct. That's
the
correct.
your
Yes,
life. That's so the work you have been doing as a volunteer, your your work in the community and the difference you've made. Would you like to tell us a bit more about how that came about and how you decided to do some volunteer work to help women and 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 feed the people as
yeah,
well?
yes. I think how all the community work started was originally when I look at myself, I've always been a kind and caring person and an empathetic person, and I have always loved helping people, even when I was at school. And then it was after that really that something happened in the world. 9/11 happened, and obviously Muslims were being portrayed in a bad way. And I strongly felt that a change needed to happen, where there needed to be a good role model out there who is doing good things, and we needed to get in the newspapers for good things. And I think that is actually what triggered me. I was already a teacher, already had the skills of public speaking and lectures. All of that was happening even before. And on top of that, fused with my personality, which I believe is kind and caring and nurturing and empathetic, I thought, why not fuse the two and go out there and make a change, make a difference? And that was for everybody, the
Mm.
whole community, all different colors and creeds and genders and everybody. So that is actually what triggered me to go out and start feeding the homeless, start helping people who have got mental health problems. I already had the degree for mental health and special needs as well. And then on top of that, women, I was already an empowered woman already. And I felt, why not empower others who have been suffering from domestic violence or suffering from anxiety or depression? I felt I could help them because I had the counseling skills and I had all the lectures to do with, you know, mental health and anxiety and anger management and all of those things. Again, so Women Together is actually a group that was born from all of that. And I've empowered many, many ladies and helped for them to gain confidence in themselves.
Yes, and I remember during COVID, you've done a lot of work as well to keep women together, to keep them empowered, to keep them going and moving as well. So you were doing those uh, fitness. Uh,
That's right. Yes. So
yeah.
Women Together did not stop even in COVID. In fact, there was a bigger need because the ladies were not getting out to come to Women Together. So we thought, why not take that to a different platform and do everything online? So even during COVID, we were still doing online classes. We were continued the fitness, which was even more important in COVID because nobody was coming out. And also we were still continuing with all the lectures on mental health and the positives of the pandemic was a big hit lecture. And also the COVID vaccine. There was so many controversies around the COVID vaccine. So we put out a lecture out there for all the ladies, go out and get that vaccine with all the positives about it and scientific knowledge about it as well. I was actually a scientist in my past life as well, before I became a teacher. So I used all the scientific knowledge I had to do a lecture on the COVID vaccine, and we actually busted all the myths and the stigma around it at a time where some ladies were reluctant to take it because of all the social media that was out there.
Yeah,
On
lots of
yeah,
conspiracy theorists, I
there were
remember.
too many, but we
Yeah,
managed to do that, and I feel we definitely made a difference anyway.
yeah. And my daughter is a pediatric nurse, and she was, Mum, tell everyone to go and get their vaccinations, please. Because she was also obviously working during COVID in wherever they were needed.
Mm.
So they worked hard as well. So how, I know that this is not where we are going to start with, but just out of curiosity, because you were so close with women during the lockdown as well, you kept in touch with all the vulnerable ladies and in Women Together. And how did you find, for example, domestic violence, those who were suffering from domestic violence or anxiety and depression? How did that go during?
It increased. It definitely increased. So anybody who was, for example, in a toxic narcissistic marriage, um, it was worse then, because then they were with their partner 100% in the house. Their partner would be working from home and they would be at home. They would not be able to go out with their friends or have any time out to eat out, or, go to their regular classes to get away, which is very important. And they ended up with that narcissistic person at home. So all the violence on the whole actually increased. Anxiety increased, because all their normal day-to-day routine was totally gone. And a lot of these ladies, they need routine. Some of the ladies do suffer from OCD, for example, and they're very strict with their organizational skills and things to be in order. And then all of a sudden in COVID, everything was all over the place. The whole routine had gone, you know. So, for example, the ladies' children were all at home.
Yes.
They didn't wake up at a certain time to take them to school. They didn't have set times to go to work. They didn't have set times for lunch and dinner and all the rest. So they were at home and everything was all over the place, the routines, which was not good for ladies, for example, of OCD. And then that made the anxiety worse as well. The
Mm.
children were at home. They were not in a routine. The children caused a lot of problems. They were bored. They couldn't go out. They couldn't let out their energy outside. And there was nothing to do for them at home. You know, the children, they need school, in my opinion, as a teacher. They need the routine. They need the learning skills. And it's not the same online, no matter how much we try and engage the children. So the online lessons, it's difficult. The children are doing other things. The focus is not there. The attention is not there. So it was a difficult time really for everybody, and even normal people who don't normally suffer from anxiety or stress were actually quite anxious during COVID, and the social networking was not there. We were cut off from our, friends and relatives. And again, Zooming to them is not the same as feeling and hugging them.
No, never.
Which is what a lot of ladies
Oxytocin.
need when they are not well. They need that hug and they need that physical support. And it's not the same, over social platforms.
And children also need that playground, don't they, to learn to negotiate and socialize
Definitely,
and
especially
create all the new neural connections for their future.
Definitely, and especially the children who have special educational needs suffered a lot. For
Yeah.
example, a child who may have ADHD and is really active, they need to go out and they need to run around in the playground, you see, and they did not have that. And again, their routine went upside down as well. So I think the children, particularly the ones that had special educational needs, suffered. And also the education did suffer, because we saw it all with the first cohort of exams that were there that year, where there was a dip around the whole, world internationally with exam levels, because, children's education had suffered, and it did take time for the schools to get the curriculums together to even start with the online lessons and things as well.
Yeah, and also I think it might have been um, anxiety triggering for parents to be homeschooling as well. There was
It's very
homeschooling.
difficult, very difficult.
Mm.
Parents are not teachers. They're
Yeah.
not trained, and you do need a lot of training to be able to discipline children. And you cannot, to a certain extent, discipline your own children in terms of teaching. You know, my own daughter, when she was 4 years old, and I remember reading a book with her and teaching her phonics. And I remember to this day, she turned around and said to me, but why are you teaching me? You're not my teacher, you're my mum. So they don't see you as a teacher, they see you as a mother, you see. So to a certain extent, children, they don't learn as effectively, not when it comes to education with their parents, because they see you as a different role. And they need teachers really from the outside who they will are more likely to listen to.
I guess it's a different type of discipline, isn't it? Where there are also
Different
other
type of
children,
discipline.
and you, in that social situation, you kind of look around and all the kids are sitting down, so you sit down. Where with your mom, you can always push your limits.
Yes, the boundaries are not there when it comes to education,
Yeah.
really, because they don't see you as that role. You know, to a certain extent you can, but during COVID, all of a sudden there was no homeschooling, programs for the parents either. Suddenly it was all of a sudden lockdown, you see. Whereas with homeschooling, the parents are trained beforehand and they're given guidance on the curriculum and what to teach and timetables. But when it comes to all of a sudden lockdown and from tomorrow now you have to do this, it definitely was not an easy time for parents. So all of that ended up with stress and anxiety.
And I can also imagine that some parents who are not perhaps educated, in their home countries, they may not know any of the things, any of the curriculum that's happening
Yes, 100%.
in
So with
England.
the curriculum, the teachers know what they are teaching, but
Yeah.
as a lay parent, they are not going to know that you do need a certain amount of general knowledge and background, knowledge before you teach a subject.
Mm.
And to teach a subject just like that from script, it's not the same, really. It's a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. So that brings me kind of to a place where what your thoughts might be regarding nowadays, in this decade now, life is very different than, when I was growing up. For example, there was no social media when I was there. We had computers, but it was only because my father was working in IBM. Otherwise, having computers was not a usual thing. And 1 megabyte was a whole mainframe in a room. So, so life was completely different. We went out, and my mom would shout out of the window, "Dinner is ready, come home." We would just run around and play at the streets, play football, whatever it was. And cycle and so on. So life is now a lot different. I think kids are a lot more inside, indoors. But it also brings me to ask you, firstly, what you think about those changes. So much technology, so much social media, and how that might be affecting the kids' expectations, because perfectionism is all about expectations, isn't it? The expectations from themselves, from others, and what they think that perhaps their parents, their teachers, or their peers might be expecting of them. And how do you notice, what do you notice about those changes in kids nowadays and
There
parents?
are huge changes, huge. So, for example, when I was a child, we didn't compete so much because we wouldn't even know, for example, what other children's exam results are.
Right.
Nowadays, everything goes out on social media.
Mm.
Sometimes social media can be used as a platform to show off as well. Oh, I got this. I must put this, I've got this many A grades in this subject. So there is huge amount of competition and peer pressure nowadays amongst the youth. And there is definitely a higher expectation really to go by for the students of nowadays. And that is not just within education, it's also within looks as well. You
Yeah.
know, you must have noticed a lot more programs like TOWIE are out there, and also, social media actually is there all about models and you have to be this slim and all these different surgeries that are taking place and all the girls are competing against each other.
It's
Um,
also fake, isn't it? There's a lot of fake in those news as well,
there
but
is, yeah,
but
photos,
the looks.
photoshopped
I
photos.
remember there was something about Beyonce was extremely upset that they had played around with her body on the picture before they printed her on one of the magazines. I can't remember, and she was like, "This is unacceptable. I'm not having that. This is
Yeah.
not the real me.
Yes.
You have
Yes,
played around
100%.
with."
You can lighten your complexion, you can smooth it out, you can add on bits. If you
Yeah,
look at
get rid of
things
the.
like, yes,
You can smooth
everything,
something.
everything. I mean, Snapchat is a classic example where, you can put your photo in and then you can do all sorts, make it look all pretty. And then that's what's going out. And other people who are looking at these pictures do not know or can't even tell if they are fake or real. Only the person who's posted knows. And then that sets a standard really then for everybody else to conform by, or they
Which is
feel,
a fantasy, isn't it? Which is not reality.
yes,
I heard actually when you said to me, when you said earlier that they put, for example, exam results or what they're doing on social media, there's also those fake news that I heard, for example, a girl who had been in a horse competition and she had actually fallen, but what she put later on, and someone knew that she had fallen off the horse, but what she put on the social media was like, "Ooh, went with flying colors."
yes,
That it all went fantastic and I did the medal or whatever. But
yes,
some people who knew she had actually fallen off the horse.
yes.
So we don't know anymore what people are reporting, whether it's the truth
Exactly,
or
exactly. But what that's resulting in is peer pressure, and
not.
everybody wants to be like everybody else because you are looking at so many people, not just within your own friends, but the whole world is on social media. And then you want to be like that person. And the expectations are false expectations in a way, what you're seeing on social media. And then you want to be like that because it's all about more and more and more. You have to shine above the rest to get the most likes on social media. You see, it's all about what can you put on social media that will go out and be a wow factor and get the most likes and views and things like that. All of that comes into it as well.
And it's the dopamine addiction, isn't it?
It
That it
is.
is creating. Because
Yes.
every time you have a like, it's like,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
And then you want more and more and more.
yeah,
Did a program recently on addictions, and what happens is the dopamine that's released is a lot more, but then your brain normalizes the dopamine, and then you need more and more of a kick to get the same result.
yeah.
I've studied this, and that's what the problem is. And this is why then in the end, so many children and teenagers are suffering from mental health problems more and more nowadays.
That's right. I also get quite a few inquiries about children under 12.
Yes, yes,
There is, and I really do blame partially social media, I guess,
yes,
for this. And then what next brings us to actually what your opinion is about the parents' expectations and what success means nowadays, what people are expecting of their children, and what kind of pressure that puts upon their children. What are your thoughts, Sidra?
yes. So even parents, they are also coming across social media and they've got friends, haven't they? And
Mm,
it's all about, again, inflating your children. They got this many A grades. What did your children get? There's a lot more awareness nowadays. And that then puts pressure on the parents to then try and force those opinions on the children. And this happens actually across the board on the whole, but particularly within the BAME community, there's an added problem. And that is that in our home countries, the higher jobs, like a doctor or medicine, is the job actually that is the one that is going to financially um, financially provide for the whole family, including the extended family. So if you look at some of the home countries within Asia, there is no social security systems in place, or, you know, or child benefit and things like that, or pensions. So in home countries, Asian countries, for example, or African countries, BAME, Black, Asian, minority ethnic countries,
Yeah.
the child needs to be a doctor, or every parent likes their children to be a doctor, because that's the top job that will give the most amount of money, that will provide for the whole family for a good 3 generations, right down to grandparents and parents and themselves and their children as well. So that mentality then is leaked here, comes to Britain, and the same parents or grandparents will try and get their children to get into medicine, because the same mentality of their home countries is then coming here. So they will push their children to do medicine, and there's a huge competition within all the families as well, because it's extended family network still, even though those families are living in this country. And it's, oh, well, so-and-so auntie's children got these grades and got into medicine. Now you've got to do the same, because otherwise it's going to be a name and shame of our family, you see. So the children don't just come across the social media peer pressure, they come across family pressure as well, double pressure to do really, really well. Okay. And this is why you get 85% approximately of grammar schools are filled with children from the BAME community, which means Black, Asian, minority ethnic, and that's a fact. I am actually a governor of a grammar school myself,
Mhm.
and I see this
How
all.
do you experience, what is it? How do you experience those kids in, in their day-to-day lives? How,
Yeah, I think
in terms
some
of
of
that
it is
pressure?
actually, I didn't really want to do this, but I was forced to do this. I'm doing it. A little bit like puppets, because they did not really get a choice in what they wanted to do. And I think that's sad. So, you know, I know, for example, in lots of grammar schools, both of my children also went to grammar school. So I'm talking about 3 grammar schools here. Sometimes you will get some of the art subjects are empty, but the science subjects are oversubscribed, because all the children have all been, it's been ingrained into them to do medicine.
If perfectionism is getting in the way of you living your life to the full, then check out my new book, Perfectly Imperfect: Cultivating Your Self-Worth in a Demanding World. It's based on cognitive behavioral principles and can help you work on yourself. So I guess the problem occurs when the child perhaps is not so good at science or maths or biology,
Yes,
so on, to get into medicine.
yes.
So
It's not just if they're good at it, but it's also, is the interest in there?
yeah.
Because we are all living in a very large world, and we all have our own talents. And some children may want to do art or music or languages.
Mm.
And then it's, oh, no, you know, you have to be a doctor. Your dad's a doctor, and your dad's brother's a doctor, and your own brother's a doctor. So then that child then feels, oh, I've got to really try and be like everybody else. So the added pressure is there, as well as the social media.
Mm.
And you know, this competition that's there now in getting higher and higher and higher grades, it is actually now gone right up to university level, where it is so difficult to get them into medicine. And my husband actually sits on the interview panel, and he's a doctor, and he laughs. In his days, it was very easy. You just needed your 3 A-level grades at A-level, and you got into medicine. And the interview was just a little chat, and that's all it was.
Yeah.
But nowadays, that interview is very, very difficult because it's not just about your academic ability, the 5A stars that you have to get nowadays, which everybody does tend to get, whoever applies, but it's filtering them down further. So they test you to see, do you really want to be doing medicine, or are you being forced by your parents? And they have psychologists sitting on that panel as well to see, is this child, really want to do it? They look at all your work experience, and guess what? They look at the artistic side of you. Are you into drama? Do you play sports? Are you into acting? Do you play a musical instrument? This is the tick list that the people at the university level are looking at.
So I guess that you could still be good at music and science at the same time.
You
Um,
could be, yes. It
yeah,
depends on the
but
individual.
but you are right. I'm just thinking, for example, 50 years ago, people used to come from the city to schools to recruit the youngsters to come and work once they're 16, 17 years old. There are many people that I know here in Essex who have been picked by, for example, banks, and then they started working for them. Can you imagine now? I mean, I know people who are Oxford graduates and have found it really, really difficult to get into either investment banking or working in banks in general.
Yes.
They send, they send CVs over and over and over again that they don't even get answers. And that is another, I guess that's another problem
Yes.
for the young generation, isn't it?
There is nothing nowadays, really, any profession I can think of that without some kind of qualification. And English and maths at GCSE level is a must for all jobs,
Mm.
whereas it wasn't when we were younger. And this is, to a certain extent, the national curriculum is higher as well. And there is a big problem out there. So if you look at other countries, the children do not even start school until they're 7 years old. Places like South Africa, for example. And the children are doing really, really well in those countries. Here, from the age of 3, you're doing, your targets start. And the brains are too young. They are far too young to even understand what they are learning. There needs to be more play within the curriculum, like there was when we were growing up, to build up those neurons in the brain. And a lot of the science, for example, that the children were learning, in our days, when they were in secondary school, they're learning here from the age of 7. The flowering plant is on the curriculum. The parts of a flowering plant is on the curriculum at the age of 7. Whereas I do not remember learning that until I was 12 years old. And I grew up in this country, went to school in this country. So everything, as well as the children competing, even in the outside world, is getting higher and higher to keep up with all this competition as well. That's very difficult, I feel, for the children nowadays.
Yes. So
Yes.
what is your take? How can the parents and children can be helped? Because the consequences is really detrimental, isn't it? The generation that we are building at the moment,
Yes,
the future generation is already suffering from quite early ages
they are.
as
I
they.
think it's a matter of government as well thinking about all of these things. I think that, I personally feel more play needs to be incorporated into the curriculum, where the children are not just all about science and maths. I mean, the current curriculum, it actually tells you that this curriculum is only for somebody who has an IQ of above 70. So anybody who falls below that IQ of 70 or may have a special need, they are not going to cope with the national curriculum. the way it is. And this is why there was a huge increase actually in children with special needs and disabilities right at the moment when the national curriculum came out, because it wasn't catered for across the board. And children who, for example, have got ADHD, or even children who have attention problems, they need short breaks. In my days when I was at school, we'd have a playtime in the morning and a playtime in the afternoon as well. And our nursery stage, I remember it very well. I have a good memory. We were making paper mache masks, and we were doing lots of artwork, fun stuff that I can even remember even now. And nowadays, the children, it's all phonics and numeracy and things like that. So it's all added pressure onto the child at a very young age. And there needs to be other schemes at the university level. We used to have the YTS scheme, youth training scheme for youngsters, where all the students who didn't really cope very well at that university stage would then go on and join these schemes, and they would be trained manually, and then they'd get brilliant jobs at the end of it. But nowadays there's this competition. I have to go to university, I have to go to university, because everybody else is going to university. And
Yeah,
then,
and sometimes they get into that debt and they study something that they are not interested in
yeah,
just because they have to go to university.
that's right. And then at the end, there may not even be a job after it all.
Yeah,
The YTS schemes are really good. But also, I think there needs to be a lot more awareness with the parents on social media, for example, the damaging effects, and
that's right.
to limit, some of the people are, befriending, for example, some of the people who they are in touch with over social media, just to make sure who are they. Because if it's like a, extremist group for, I don't know, beauty, for example, that child may end up with eating disorders because of the people they're coming across. What kind of groups are your children joining on social media? Are they perfectionist groups, for example, who are, fanatics about being a doctor, or fanatics about keeping their bodies slim, or exercise fanatics? I've come across somebody recently, a friend of mine, and she's obsessed with exercise, obsessed with it. Five classes a day just to get her body slim. And it's over the top. So just education with parents on where are the boundaries, where are the limits, addictions is something they need to know about as well.
I, I guess also, promoting self-acceptance,
Yes, yes, and
uh,
confidence.
authenticity, because I see that is really lacking, that there is, because especially with teenagers, they're just learning about who they are, just finding their place in the world. And often they look out there to see, oh, okay, that person is very popular, so I want to be just like them.
Yes, I
And
think you're very right. I think that you need to have confidence in yourself with who you are. And then it doesn't matter what everybody else around you is doing. You need to be happy with who you are.
yeah,
And you do not need to be acknowledged by everybody else to be liked. And that's really important, because not everybody will like everybody else anyway. Even you don't like everybody. So then you need to be who you are, not who everybody else wants you to be.
and I guess being aware of the fact that that innate feeling in us, that wanting to be liked by everyone, is really from the part of our brain that's thousands and thousands of years old, where we were in tribes, right? We lived in tribes of a few people, and being thrown up out of that tribe meant death sentence, because you couldn't survive by yourself.
Mm.
But now in 21st century, we have so many tribes. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got TikTok tribe, we've got gym tribe, we've got science club tribe, we've got um, uh, another class tribe, we've got the swimming lessons tribe. We have so many tribes now that it's not possible to be liked by everyone in each and
There
every.
is a saying, if I can remember it, I am me, uh, not who you want me to be, not who you think I am me.
Mm.
So that's a good one that I can think of as a teacher anyway.
Yeah, beautiful. And just building it from inside up rather than from outside,
Yes,
and hoping that every time
yes,
you have that approval from outside, you feel better about yourself. So rather than that, building it from inside, that no
yes.
matter
You need
what
to be,
happens.
yeah, you need to be happy with yourself and not need to be acknowledged all the time or accepted by everybody else, really. And
Mm.
this is where you have the problems then of trying to be perfect, because you are trying to conform to what they want, not who you want to be. If you want to be, see, if you accept yourself, then you will think you are perfect, you see. Then you won't need to go higher and higher and higher because you're satisfied. And I think the satisfaction is not always there nowadays.
Yeah, just trying to be, I guess, like a certain looks, certain ways as well. I heard also that there was a lot of, young people who want to have cosmetic operations
Hmm.
or are having cosmetic operations, quite high amount. So I guess accepting our perfectly imperfect selves
Yes. I
is,
think with the cosmetic stuff, I've explained to somebody who I've come across, a mother who is really obsessed with getting her nose slimmer and getting other bits done. And I said to her one day that when you have children, they are still going to have your old nose because your genetics are not going to change. And then I said, what are you going to do to your child then? You're not going to operate on her to have her nose then slimmed, are you? And then all of a sudden it clicked.
yeah, that's
Because
really
you know,
very
you can do what you
way.
like yourself, but then that does not change your genetics because your parents are still going to have that nose. And when your child is born, that child is going to look like you, your old self, your original self. So you're changing nature, and that doesn't make you happy, really. It's
Hmm.
not your natural self, is it? And that's going to come out in your children. So sometimes I think a little bit of knowledge on science helps. And also the same kind of thing with genetics when it comes to subjects that you like. So, for example, uh, say, uh, say, for example, your parent is artistic and is really into art, and then you are forced to go into medicine. You may find your children are going to go back to being an artist because that's within the genes, you see. So
Yeah.
it is important, really, that we look at what we like, what we want, and do that. Because somewhere along the lines, that family is then going to change back to its roots, which was not medicine, for example. I think
That's
that,
really interesting, isn't it? Because, I thought of that the other day. I was watching Who Do You Think You Are with, and Ollie, it was Ollie Murs, and he was looking for his, just information about his great grandmother and great grandfather, and found out that they were actually doing circus act where he was playing the guitar
right,
of a ladder held by
yeah,
his partner. And y- and Ollie Murs, as we know, is musician,
yes,
and he didn't even know that
yes,
his great grandfather was
yes.
playing the guitar and performing in
See,
one of
that's an example. You're
Hmm.
changing your family structure and you're changing your family dynamics, then, are you not? Then,
Yeah,
by
and
going against what you want.
yeah, because it just comes, you inherit those DNAs no matter
You
one
do,
way
you
or
do.
another.
And
And
people think you inherit just your looks, but it's not just your looks. It's your
mm,
mannerisms and it's also your personality and what you like, hobbies wise as well. It's all there. It's all there.
yeah, and I guess that the concept of what's beautiful and what isn't, those perceptions are all socially constructed. We are not born with it. Who when people think, oh, that's an ugly nose, where does that come from? Where did you learn that? Your nose has a function to smell. Is
Yeah,
it doing it? And if it's
exactly.
doing it, then it's doing what it was
Yeah,
meant to do,
yeah,
right? Or
yeah,
eyes,
definitely.
in certain cultures, it has to be, certain eyes are not attractive, certain type of eyes are more attractive. Well, where does this come from?
Yes, so personality comes from nature and nurture, as you know. So nowadays, what's happening is we're not looking at nature, but we're looking more at the nurture, which is the outside environment that is changing our beliefs and our thoughts. But if we went more towards, the nature side, which is the genetics and what we want and what we feel, we would all be happier people, really.
It would be a better place. And we
Yes,
will keep promoting this together.
yes, definitely, definitely.
Sidra, we will keep empowering people and women who are also most of the time tend to spend more time with their children so that we can help them empower their children and accept them as well. It's
Mhm.
been uh, it's been amazing chatting with you. Is there anything that you feel we haven't covered that you would like to add before we finish today?
I think that we've covered quite a lot of range of
We have,
topics really, and all we
yeah.
can do is just to continue really with our good work and hopefully change people's lives. I think the awareness is actually there about the damaging effects of social media, but like I said before, it's really a government level problem, some of these things really. If they lowered the standards down a little bit, with schooling and education and parliament laws were put into place and go a little bit back to what it was in the olden days, life would change a little bit. Social media, they can stop some of it, and that would get the children out more, wouldn't it, as well, out in the world. And, there's children out there who can't even ride a bike nowadays, which is so important, really, for both sides of your brain to connect with the neurons, both sides, left and right, and all of this kind of stuff. It's not happening, you see. And if the social media side sort of lowered down a little bit, it would get children out and go back to the olden days. It can happen, but I think sometimes I feel it's a government level issue which needs to be dealt with at the top, really.
And
Have you?
sorry,
No, that was it. That's all.
any final wise words for the parents who might be concerned about their children's use of social media or what they are expecting of their children and how they are putting perhaps pressures upon them. Any
Mhm.
final wise words
Yeah.
to those
I think
parents?
knowledge is gold. So you need to know the knowledge of what is actually happening out in the world and how it's affecting your child, but also to actively go out and seek the help. So if you do feel your child is addicted to social media or may have an eating disorder, for example, then don't forget there is help out there. There are coaches out there, there's counseling out there. You've got your local GP who can signpost you to the relevant organizations to not just help you, but also help the child. And there's family therapy organizations as well that can give family counseling. So it's actually to, be aware of those worries and anxieties and issues that are out there in the world, which you can do by gaining the knowledge in the first instance, but then take the relevant action by, going and actively seeking for the help and the support in the right relevant organizations.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And we will also put the links to your organizations in the description so people can easily find you as well.
Yes,
Thank you so much for coming today, Sidra, and all your input. I'm sure this has been extremely helpful, especially for parents who might be worrying about their kids' future,
yes,
as well as how they are striving now at the moment as
yes.
well. So thanks very much.
It's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us in I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave stars and a review. Help me spread the word by sharing this with your friends and family. My practical manual, Transformation Through the Power of Quotes, will help you or someone you know get through tough times and feel happier. It is now available on Amazon paperback and Kindle. You can also check out our website, mindandmood.co.uk. Thank you again, and remember, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Bye for now.
They need that hug and they need that physical support. And it's not the same, over social platforms.
And children also need that playground, don't they, to learn to negotiate and socialize and
Definitely,
and
especially
create all the new neural connections for their future.
definitely, and especially the children who have special educational needs suffered a lot. For example, a child who may have ADHD and is really active, they need to go out and they need to run around in the playground. We are all living in a very large world and we all have our own talents. And some children may want to do art or music or languages. And then it's, oh, no, you have to be a doctor. Your dad's a doctor and your dad's brother's a doctor. From the age of 3, you're doing, your targets start. And the brains are too young. They are far too young to even understand what they are learning.
The future generation is already suffering from quite early ages.
They are.
As
I
they
think it's a matter of government as well thinking about all of these things. I mean, you don't like everybody. So then you need to be who you are, not who everybody else wants you to be.
And I guess being aware of the fact that that innate feeling in us, that wanting to be liked by everyone, is really from the part of our brain that's thousands and thousands of years old, where we were in tribes, right? We lived in tribes of a few people, and being thrown up out of that tribe meant death sentence.